Do you have to run to a different computer? Nope. There we go.
Okay.
You had to run to a different computer?
They sit right next to each other. So,
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah. So I spend my day sliding one side of the other. So, okay. So, hi, Ron. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with us. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And again, I'd like to go ahead and welcome you as the inaugural interview for local Charlottesville area entrepreneurs. So I was wondering if you could just kick us off with a little bit about your background, who you are, your entrepreneurial, what you've done, why we're talking, and a bit about how you got started.
Sounds great. Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. So yeah, I started in San Diego. I was born and raised out there. Went to San Diego State, graduated, just regular business major, nothing exciting. Not sure what I was going to do, but I had done a feasibility study in a venture management class, and I ended up doing it on Domino's Pizza. And at the end of the semester, you had to turn in your report, 70-page paper, go in front of a venture capitalist and banker and your professor and do your pitch and see if they'd loan you money. And I found out that obviously they would all, I mean, this was in the early 80s. So Domino's was not new, but they were definitely the only thing in town as far as delivery went. And it kind of got the bug started for me that, wow, this is kind of a profitable business, and I kind of like the model. And so I started working with them while I was still in college. I actually started managing a store my senior year of college, which probably wasn't the best for my grades, but it was a 50 hours a week job and carrying 19 credits, so that was a little crazy, but you made a lot of money back then doing that, and with that company. And so I worked for them for a couple of years, and then just kind of grew tired of wearing their uniform and being open their hours and doing the things. And so I decided to move out to the East Coast. And my wife was my wife now was at William & Mary on a volleyball scholarship, and she was from San Diego as well. So I drove out, picked up a job as a bartender, and then as a cook, and then just kind of looked around. There wasn't many Mexican restaurants in Williamsburg, and well, there weren't any then. And so I kind of stumbled onto
found a niche in the market.
Yeah, and then there was a little setup with a place went out of business. They had to get rid of all their stuff. I bought it for $7,000, which is just nuts. So basically a full restaurant, and I pulled it all out of there, figured out how to get a lease somewhere else, and just kind of learned trial by fire. Got open super cheap, and then that was in 1989, and then I just kind of kept tinkering with other restaurants and that same concept, and kind of growing that. And in 2021, I sold 3 restaurants, and then right at the start of 22, I sold my last one. So now I'm retired. So
it's actually funny you should mention that you got all your stuff through a sale, because I just finished Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential, and the first thing one of the first things he says in it is, "Don't go buy stuff new. Wait for a local restaurant to go out of business and pick up all their stuff." So
100%. It takes it really. I mean, even my last couple restaurants that I opened, which weren't that long ago, bought a fair amount of used equipment. It just until you're 100% positive that the location is correct, that everything's going to go right. The difference of a $6,000 or $7,000 stove to a $1,000 one, it's not that not that great, flipping burgers or whatever.
Yeah. Awesome. Excellent. So as you know, I do teaching for the CIC, and I try and be a resource for local entrepreneurs. I've got those things in my head that I've worked with or seen or interact with people, and just kind of go, why don't we write something about this? Why don't we put something together about this? Kind of in your own looking back on your entrepreneurial life. What are those areas? What's that thing that you think of? Hey, I wish I'd known this earlier, or I wish I had learned this in a different way that you could share with our entrepreneurs.
Well, the one thing that I didn't ever really learned, and maybe it was my own fault in college, was how valuable percentages were.
Gotcha.
And you know, and that there's really, now with the internet, it's a lot easier. Obviously, back then that wasn't the case. And so, you know, to be able to learn something was, again, trial by fire for me. And it took me quite a few years to learn like how important my percentages were.
So can you get into that for the people who don't know what percentages are?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
you know, like in me, for the restaurant business, it's all about my variable cost of food cost, labor cost, and then beverage cost. And so, because all of my places towards the end were bars as well, you know, you'd break it down to alcohol and then beer and wine, each one having their own cost percentage. And in the state of Virginia, you have to be careful also, because you have to know about the cost or the percentages. There's no bars in the state of Virginia, supposedly.
Yeah, restaurants
You know,
who serve alcohol. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. So you got to maintain that percentage. But the other ones, you know, so even like my original menu, I mean, I just basically wrote a menu based on stuff I knew out of San Diego and California Mexican food. Went off their pricing. I didn't know anything of pricing. I didn't tap in the resources, which I could have. I didn't know about you know, U.S. food service having test kitchens, and Cisco doing the same. And you can go to them and go into their facility and tell them the kind of food you want to do, and their chef works with you, and you can sample products. You can, you know,
Oh, wow.
They can, you know, they'll cook up stuff with you. They'll work pricing with you, all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. And so again, sounds like a great resource for going, like for percentages, right? How much of your variable costs are dedicated to food? And so you've got an ingredient that's, say, more expensive and using very few items, it's going to tend to run up your costs more than, you know, something like a bean or a chicken that you can just use throughout a bunch of different recipes.
Exactly. And
Okay.
you know, and it's just making sure that, you know, on the kind of, in my business, I mean, it was on the daily, or at least the weekly, know where your food cost percentage was, because there's a parameter there, right? You know, you don't want it to be below, for less, like you didn't want to be below 29%, because then you're starting to cheat your customer. And you don't want to be above 34%, because then it's, you know, so if you can get it in that, you know,
window.
Yeah, then you're, you know, you should be profitable, at least on from that standpoint. And then you do the same with each of the others. You know, you've got your labor, and then your beverages, for me, as far as the variables. And you just have to make sure that they're marketed properly, and that you're getting what you can value wise out of that. The other ones, you know, the fixed costs were a lot easier, obviously. I mean, because they are fixed, but you still would like to know that, you know, you got to keep your rent between 5 and 10%, you know.
Gotcha.
I mean, sure, it'd be great to be 2%, but you're not going to find a place for that. But
it's not a place you want to put a restaurant, right?
No, yeah, right, yeah. So those were the things that really helped. And you know, I've never been a proponent, like, at least in my business, of using a bookkeeper or anything of that sort, because I want to put in the numbers, like, because then I can see them and I can feel them, right? You know, so if I'm putting in all the invoices for even all of my locations, I mean, I let management do it as things kind of grew longer, and you can do QuickBooks online, and I can see things in real time, all that kind of stuff. With the new POS systems, you know, the same thing. You can real time. I can watch, you know, an order be served at one of the restaurants, you know. But that wasn't the case in the old days. But you know, being able to be in control of all of your numbers, I think is very important for any business. And obviously, you deal with all sorts of different types of businesses. So my expertise became, you know, restaurant business, and that was well, that's about it for that. So.
It's great. So yeah, I mean, did you ever have a time where, you know, a percentage on, say, labor or a percentage on food jumped unexpectedly, and how did you go back and try and get to the root of that problem?
Oh man, yeah, I mean, the numbers, food wise, especially. So I mean, like an easy one for well, right now, say eggs. eggs are
Gotcha.
crazy right now, right? At your house, who cares if you're going to pay $6 for a dozen eggs? You're only going to use a dozen every once in a while, but a bakery right now, they're bleeding, right?
Gotcha.
So they've got to be reactionary to those kind of things, and they have to change their prices, which is, there's just no way around it. In my
Gotcha.
business, it would be avocados or tomatoes. Like there was a crazy time with tomatoes once where the tomato market got so high that the drug cartel in Mexico got into it, and they started capturing trucks and pulling them all, and it was just like, what the heck? And they were that valuable. And, and
Take the
so,
poppies out, put it in tomato plants.
yeah, right. I mean, and, so some of those things you just have to eat it, I guess that's kind of a pun in there, but it's just, you can't be too reactionary, because then your customer is going to get unhappy. Every time you walk in, you have something scratched out on a menu and a different price is put on there or something like that. So you try to keep those costs down on the lower side. But the same thing has happened with labor in the last, say, 3 to 4 years. Not only is our baseline gone up, which is totally fine and acceptable, but the higher end has gone up as well.
Gotcha.
Like you try to, it's always been hard to get a great employee that's a bartender or a server into management, because unless they're ready for that step in their life, they just want more responsibility, that kind of thing. You can't pay them what they make.
Gotcha.
Right. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can make $400 a night tending bar, and you're not going to make that in a 8 to 10 hour management shift.
Yeah. With management, it's kind of tough, because you're like, great, you can make less money and have more responsibility, right? And that tend to be how people want it to go. But I guess you got to sit down and explain to them that the career path wise, getting into management's good. So
yeah, exactly.
So again, just trying to help people who are listening to this kind of expand their horizons, right? I've got educatingentrepreneur.com as my blog. The CIC is out there. Again, as I mentioned, Civic is out there. Charlottesville Business Innovation Council is out there. Small business associations out there. Chamber of Commerce is out there. But for yourself, what are some books or some resources or things you look at that say, hey, if I was starting today, or even if I'm just trying to refine what I'm currently doing, here's some resources I would look at?
Well, a lot of the ones you just mentioned are definitely the easy go-to, right? It's funny, back when I started, we were using these books, or I was called Dome, DOME,
Okay.
and they were, it was like remember those books? It was like an accounting book.
Yeah.
I learned just from that book of like fill in the blanks. That was before Excel came around, or before, like, I switched a bunch of stuff over to QuickBooks. But QuickBooks is really, I mean, if you're not a numbers person, QuickBooks is still very easy to use, and you can learn a lot in there. They have a lot of tutorials, a lot of tools.
Oh, excellent.
Same with, I was mentioning that your food service providers have different resources for you to be able to use. Yeah. So do most of the POS companies, the point of sales companies now. So a company like Toast, who they're kind of the largest right now in the restaurant business. They do a great job if you have time, and that's always the case. Most entrepreneurs, you're working 15 hours a week, and where are you going to etch out another 45 minutes to listen to this video that these guys are putting out about how to save money or make money?
That's entrepreneurs are just, 15 hours a day is kind of standard, and you get to work 6 days a week most days. You're welcome. Yeah. But it really sounds like what you're saying is partnering with your vendors is often a good way for entrepreneurs. Vendors are out there, they're trying to sell. To do that, it sounds like they're starting to expand into, how do I educate my consumer, meaning the entrepreneur, so that the entrepreneur now goes, hey, I work with Cisco. Cisco showed me what I'm making, what the recipes should look like, what my food costs associated with that would vaguely, generally be. And then that way you buy from Cisco. So there's value in it for Cisco as well. But I had no idea that existed for restaurants now. And it sounds like that could be a real good resource for anyone looking at any sort of restaurant.
Yeah, definitely.
And then again, yeah, not in restaurants, there's probably other partnerships. So rather than looking at partners or vendors as a traditional you versus me relationship, think of it as a two-way street.
Exactly.
I'm going to be loyal to you, you're going to be loyal back to me and help me.
Yeah. And even your sales rep, if you befriend them and actually sit down and have some good conversation, they'll tell you what other restaurants are doing, or they'll tell you how, and I'm sure it's the same in whether it's, pharmaceutical or whatever you're peddling.
Yeah.
I mean, once you really start talking to people, they'll open up and you can gain a lot of information from people. And in the older days, I mean, I probably learned, a bunch of secrets and things like that from playing poker and playing golf with all guys in my industry.
Gotcha.
Guys and girls,
Yeah.
I mean, it just time that you had away and you ended up, like there was this association up on the UVA corner. It was a restaurant association just kind of built by us, and so we'd get together and we'd do some things together. And
awesome.
It was amazing when you'd sit down and you start talking to people and they would say something and you're like, well, what's that? And then, they explain what this method of something they were doing. And it's very helpful. Very helpful.
And again, quite often competition, I'll put that in quotes, isn't always competition, right? If if you've got a new, pho place on the corner and you're serving Mexican, you guys aren't really directly competitors because people aren't necessarily going, I'll take either, right? Usually you're in the mood for something. So, it's not, you're not going to give away all the secrets, but having a good conversation is probably helpful for the industry as a whole. So
very, very much so. Yes.
Again, just thank you for your time so far. But just before we leave, I'd love to get some personal feedback on, as an entrepreneur, it gets lonely, right? It gets frustrating. Again, like you said, you're working 15 hours a day, 6 days a week. You start banging your head against the wall. What are some thoughts or inspirations or even just tips and tools you have to get through those kind of tougher times where you're questioning, why do you do it all?
Yeah, that is a tough one, especially, if you start having children and I have 4 kids and, my wife was, gracious enough to stay with me this entire ride. So, and so, I mean, she raised our kids and with me being gone so much, and as I got older, I got smarter with my hours, learned to trust people more. But in that, with the trust factor, I mean, you just have to put safeguards in place so you can monitor things and make sure that people aren't, stealing from you, because that's a pretty easy thing to do, especially in my business. So the motivation in there to me was, okay, I need to get 4 kids through college, things are not going well with this restaurant, I'm losing money, but I'm making money over here at this restaurant. And what can I do to, to get over that hurdle and then, to me, I'm looking at, I always had a number in my head that, I wanted to retire by 55, and it was just, I don't know why I was 55. I remember my father got lucky and retired when he was about 57. But yeah, I don't know. And so I really strove for that. And then COVID came and pushed me back by a couple of years.
Gotcha.
That was a big, I just had to stay, I couldn't walk away at that time because I had partners at my other businesses and we needed help, just to get through all that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, for most people, money is your motivator, but you're going to get to a certain point where that's just not going to do it for you anymore, and you're going to have to find something else that's going to help you motivate you, whether it's, hey, you know what, if I can do this, I'm going to reward myself with this boat, or I'm going to, I mean, it ties in with money, but or if I can do this, okay, then that means my family's going to get to go on a trip to Iceland, and then you work your butt off for the next, whatever it is, 9 months, and you receive your prize,
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I think those kind of goals are kind of get important,
Gotcha. So so it sounds like, again, take a deep breath, look at your whole plan. Most of us at least have somewhat of a plan when we get into this, right? But then also make sure there's little milestones along the way so that it's not just one 20-year long plan. It's break it down into smaller chunks is helpful.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Awesome. Well, Ron, I want to say thank you so much for your time here. Really appreciate all of your help. I appreciate you being my guinea pig. Thank you for your time.
Got the bar low for him, so that's good.
Will do. So, awesome. Thank you so much. And have a great rest of your day.
You do the same. Thanks.